There is one thing I gotta know.
Mm-hmm.
What's with the spandex?
That is not spandex!
Hello, this is the Bloobcast. I'm Ewan.
I'm Rob.
And I'm James. But the question is, why are we the Bloobcast?
Yes!
Yeah!
Yes.
Okay, so for today, we are doing a Bloobcast first and taking a look at something that was suggested to by a listener. And we are taking a look at the 2009 season of Power Rangers RPM, which was the last season produced by Disney. And before I explain a bit about what the premise of this one was, I want to give a thank you to Thomas Meehan, who got in touch with us by email a few months ago, and this was one of the things he said he wanted us to talk about. Sorry it's taken a while to get this out, but we had a schedule was kind of booked in, and this was like the first slot we had. Hope the episode ends up being worth the wait. And just a reminder, if you want us to look at anything, you can get in touch with us on social media or email, and all that information will be at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Power Rangers RPM, get in gear! Da-da-da-da-da.
This series is set in an alternate universe to like pretty much every other version of Power Rangers, and is set on a post-apocalyptic wasteland following the outbreak of a computer virus called Venjix, who conquered the world with armies of robotic soldiers. The last remnants of humanity live within Corinth, which is a city encased within a dome. In order to combat Venjix's attack bots and defend the city, a scientist named Dr. K has created a group of Power Rangers.
A computer virus has built armies of robotic soldiers and taken control of our world. But there is still one place we can be safe. The domed city of Corinth. And the only hope we have left is... Power Rangers RPM, get in gear! Power Rangers RPM, we stand together! Power Rangers RPM, get in gear! Power Rangers RPM, get in gear!
Who do not wear spandex, as she will very angrily tell you if you dare to call them spandex.
It is spandex, though.
Yeah. Basically, this show is Terminator meets Age of Ultron, meets Mad Max, meets Clint Eastwood, meets The Simpsons movie, meets Power Rangers with a little bit of Godfather thrown in.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. I can explain all of that if you want.
The beginning of it is amazing, because it basically is just Mad Max turns up in his V8, and he's driving around the Mad Max apocalyptic wasteland. And yeah, it's wild. Here's Power Rangers kids. The entire world has been blown up and it's all gone. Yeah.
Getting right into it, I think the strongest episodes of the show are the opening episodes, because they are so different to your typical Power Ranger season. Because we start off with like all the surviving humans fleeing to this dome city, and we get brief introductions to some of the characters who end up becoming Power Rangers later on. And then we skip forward a year later to when like everything's a wasteland, and we meet our future Black Ranger with his like Mad Max car in the desert trying to get to this dome city. And then like we're slowly introduced to the world through his eyes, and then as we go on we get later episodes showing the backstories to the main characters prior to the Venjix attack. And it's just really cool, very different thing. It's really experimental kind of thing.
No, it's wild. Like, it's this whole new story, I guess. Like, I understand that the original Power Rangers was all like very magic based. I think it was a guy called I'm gonna look him up because I did look up his name. Zordon, that's it. Yeah, Zordon, and he was like a weird magician, and he was looking for teenagers with attitude.
Alpha, Reader's Escape. Recruit a team of teenagers with attitudes.
This is not the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like we said, this is very much Mad Max world. And yeah, all of the characters have horrific backstories where they all they're all tragic and it's all sad, and I love it.
I was just going to say, literally, that this show does a better job than the DCEU, which is the DC Extended Universe, where, genuinely, I'm impressed with the writing in this show, because, Batman vs Superman, there are two characters that I've thrown in, Wonder Woman and Batman, and none of them, Lex Luthor and all that, they don't have films that, explore their characters. Each Ranger and Dr. K, who we'll talk about a bit later, literally gets an episode exploring each of their characters. We all get, familiarise ourselves with them. So yeah, it does a better job fleshing them out than the DCU. So I like that they, have a lot of extensive character development throughout the show. They're all full of depth.
Yeah. And it's really nice. They take time to introduce stuff, kind of incrementally. There's Dr. K. We don't meet Dr. K in person until a good few episodes in. At the beginning, she's like a robot voice that talks to them, and I think it's kind of like the original show where it's like a weird robot thing. It's like talking to them. But then it's like, oh no, it's a real person. She was the woman behind the curtain, as it turns out. Sorry, we've spoiled a twist, is that Dr. K is like a teenage girl. But that's a fun twist in its own right. But yeah, there's a lot of great touches like that.
Before we go any further, I think we should do our staple and discuss kind of like our history with Power Rangers.
So basically, I actually used to love Power Rangers as a kid. Genuinely, when I was a kid, I was always about Power Rangers, I was always about Pokemon and, all that other stuff. And Digimon as well. Digimon was always this thing that, obviously came on TV all the time. I don't know why I've said it like this is this thing, everyone knows what Digimon is.
Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions. Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions. Change into digital champions to save the digital world.
When I was a kid, I grew up watching the original Power Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I also watched the what was it called again, Rob? The Wild Force?
Wild Force, yes.
Power Rangers flying higher, go. Wild Force running faster. Wild Force. Power Rangers stick together, go. We will save the world. Wild Force. Power Rangers. What's right forever. Wild Force. Power Rangers. Protect this world together.
And I was always obsessed with the Blue Ranger in that, who was a shark ranger. So he's modelled after a shark. I also watched the Power Rangers involving ninjas and stuff like that.
Ninja Storm.
Ninja Storm, that was it. But also, the ultimate one that really stuck with me was Lightspeed Rescue. That was like the first proper show that I watched of Power Rangers, and I really kind of got acquainted with the franchise, as it were. And I played the video game of that on PS1. At the time, I thought it was like the best thing ever, but actually it's terrible. And no one should ever play it, ever. You can watch it on YouTube and tell me I'm wrong.
You should all play it. Just to spite him. Do it.
No. No, please. With Power Rangers, it's something that I've always loved as a kid. And it's funny because I still carry a lot of the things I loved as a kid with me as an adult, like Oddworld and Star Wars, Marvel, Pokemon, etc. Power Rangers I've long forgotten about, so it was kind of weird to kind of just get a suggestion saying we should watch Power Rangers for this episode, because I thought, I've never watched Power Rangers for a very, very, very long time. So then I watched RPM, and that was a bit of a shocker to me, because I just grew up, of what Ewan described as these magical warriors and stuff like that, who have summon robots, and it's all a bit kid-friendly and a bit light-hearted, and it's like, here's the show you grew up with, but everyone's dead. And that was a bit of a shocker. So,
It's weird because the show RPM makes a point of like never saying kill. Like they never refer to like people, like the whole world kind of dying. It's the classic thing of like characters say destroy rather than kill kind of thing. But then like they do show characters die in the first episodes, and it's literally like close family and friends and all of these things, and you go, oh my god. Anyway, continue, Rob. James, sorry.
it's like growing up on the Teletubbies and then like watching it again, and like everyone suddenly it's like a post-dystopian world where the sun's the bad guy or something. That's what it felt
the real
like
bad
to me.
guy.
Yeah, Nunu is like Venjix's robots that he sends out every week. At one point, he'll do the download and turn into a giant version of himself. He'll just suck up the entire Teletubby world. Sorry, James, we've completely derailed your story.
No, I finished. I think that's pretty much it, to be honest.
I was aware of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers when it was on, but as I was born a few months after the series premiered, most of my early exposure was through cultural osmosis. I definitely remember there being like tin spaghetti in the supermarket, which is weird because I remember I used to make my mum buy me the spaghetti even though I didn't eat the spaghetti, I just liked the label. I remember watching Power Rangers here and there, and I had a few toys as well as a novelisation of an episode where they fought a bee monster. But the first time I remember watching full episodes of the show were during Power Rangers in Space. It wasn't something I watched super often, as I wasn't always aware of when it was on, and my parents didn't really want me watching it. I think because, because my mum was a bit funny about American shows, as she called them, and of course, it's funny when you look back on the show, but when it came out, it was pretty controversial because of all the punching and kicking. They're like, oh, it's too violent. I think it was because kids were copying it in the playground and causing serious injuries, so yeah.
Oh god.
But yeah, in spite of that, I did catch the show when I could. I particularly remember the episode of Power Rangers Wild Force called Forever Red, which featured all the Red Rangers from previous seasons teaming up.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's do it, guys. Morphin time! Rhinosaurus! Mighty Morphin Power Rangers! Morphin time! Steel Ranger! Ah! Shift into turbo! Red Turbo Ranger! Yeah! Let's rock it! Red Space Ranger! Go! Galactic! Go! Galactic! Blade speed! Rescue! Red Light Speed Ranger! Yeah! Time Force! Time Force! Time Force! Yeah! Quantum Power! Quantum Ranger! Yeah! World Access! Yeah! Red Wild Force Ranger! Red Alien Ranger! Yeah! Alright guys, let's do it!
And I kind of watched it on and off throughout the years, and then I think it was around Power Rangers Mystic Falls I kind of just lost interest because I was like a teenager at the time. I'm like probably a bit too old to be watching this now. A big part of my reintroduction to the series was when I was about 17, and there was an internet content creator called Linkara who he mainly does comic book videos, but he did a series of lengthy videos talking about like a retrospective on Power Rangers called The History of Power Rangers. And I remember watching those, and they got me kind of thinking, oh, there's actually some pretty cool stuff in this show. And I started checking out some of the various seasons based on what caught my interest. And the two I particularly liked were Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers Time Force. around this time I did watch RPM, and I did start getting into it, but I didn't finish watching it because the site I watched it on used uploads to a site called Mega Video. Don't know if you remember that, but it was a relic of a bygone era. It was a bit annoying at the time because you could only watch like a certain amount of footage per day without signing up for an account that you had to pay for. But then it got taken down by the US government trying to pass an act called SOPA, which is another one of those stupid attempts where people who don't understand how the internet works try and control and regulate it. And because I never found another site to watch the show on, I just moved on to other things like Spider-Man and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And in recent years, Power Rangers has kind of become my, I say, guilty pleasure franchise. As in, I enjoy it while fully acknowledging how stupid it can be sometimes. But I am a big fan of the Boom Studios comic series that modernises the original Mighty Morphin show and takes itself a bit more seriously. And I got really into the fighting game Power Rangers Battle for the Grid over lockdown. But it wasn't until we did this episode where I finally sat down to watch RPM all the way through. And yeah, I had a good time watching it.
Nice. And Ewan, do you want to go ahead and tell your story as well?
Yeah. Okay. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I saw it on TV at a friend's house. And I was aware of the cultural phenomenon. I'm sure that there was like some, breakfast cereal that had Power Rangers on it. I'm sure I got it as a toy in McDonald's. And that's about it for about 22 years. Or 20 or so. No, I was aware of Power Rangers. I never really watched it, or I didn't watch it to the extent that you guys have, where like you guys have very clear memories of episodes. I don't remember any specific episodes. I just remember like the general format. The guys are all fighting, and then like the evil monster man gets really big at the end, and then they turn into a giant robot.
And they have a kaiju fight.
And they have a big kaiju fight. And it looks a bit like the old Godzilla things because they're all in these really kind of silly costumes. And that's about it. I remember like as a kid, even really young, my sister pointed out how sexist it was that the Pink Ranger was the girl. And then, of course, I later discovered that apparently the Black Ranger was a black guy and the Yellow Ranger was Asian. So there was very questionable stuff at the time.
A funny trip because obviously the Power Rangers, it takes footage from a Japanese show. The footage that Mighty Morphin used, the Yellow Ranger in the like, Power Rangers was a girl, but in the Japanese version it was a boy. They just, I think, so props to the Americans for adding in an extra female cast member, even if it was a bit weird. Suddenly she turns into a boy, kind of.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing, is that I was somehow aware, I don't know, someone must have told me as a kid, but I knew that there was the American version, and then there was the Japanese version, and it was like a whole different thing, and I somehow knew about the localization process, like when I was fairly young, and I can't remember how I know that, or how I knew that.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious in the earlier seasons because...
Is it?
Well, at least watching back in it as an adult, because the footage when they're like fighting the monsters and everything looks completely different to the American shot footage, and it's, I think because they filmed it on different like types of film, so like the footage where they're like, as the Power Rangers fighting monsters is always way more grainy than the actual American shot footage.
Yeah, so maybe as a kid I was watching it and it was like really blatant, I don't know, like where, you know, like it was obvious that it was shot at different locations or whatever. But yeah, no, so I didn't really watch it. I was kind of like James, where I kind of just forgot about it. There were some things here and there where I was reminded of, I never really forgot about Power Rangers. I was always conscious of it existing. I didn't realize it had kept going after the 90s, though, which is I think a lot of people will be shocked by this. It is still going, everyone. Like, Power Rangers has not stopped. They have not stopped making them, which is kind of fair play to them.
Also worth noting is that you said it's been going on since the 90s. Not only has it been going on since the 90s, but it's literally stuck in the 90s. Like, the style of the show. I've been watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer at the same time, and I cannot tell the difference tonally from season 1 of Buffy and Power Rangers RPM. It was just like... What?
It gets even crazier when you think that the Super Sentai, the Japanese version, has been going on since the 70s. So, but yeah, it's a long going show. I did come across Power Rangers a couple of times. One of them I wanted to bring up because I want Rob, who I think is editing this, to discover Brandon Rogers. So Brandon Rogers is a comedian who does interesting YouTube videos, I'll say that. They're very funny, but yeah, interesting. And Brandon Rogers did a parody of Power Rangers where I think he dresses up as... is it Rita Repulsa?
Rita Repulsa, yes.
The Rita Repulsa, yeah. So I want Rob to discover this.
Girl, my name's Sharita Repulsa. I am an intergalactic star witch. I had a baby when I was 12 years old. Why? Because I'm evil. I'm so evil, I smoke cigarettes. I don't care. On weekends, I like to work as a parking enforcer. I am goddamn diabolical. One time, I stole my neighbor's Wi-Fi. I don't give a
And that was my most recent reintroduction to Power Rangers. And then, yeah, the last thing literally was we were requested to watch Power Rangers for the show. And that was my reintroduction to the series, but of course to a very specific series, to RPM, which is a wonderful, I guess, gateway for me as someone who has never got into Power Rangers. It's a great gateway for me to get into it because it's got all the kind of weird post-apocalyptic stuff that I like. So fair play to it.
So I was just about to say, actually, this show has a lot of Fallout vibes.
It really does, yeah.
Like, the backstory of the Yellow Ranger in particular, I thought.
Yeah.
When
she's left in the wasteland by her rich friends.
Yeah, like, I don't know why, but that whole thing just reminded me of Fallout for some reason.
It's got a similar kind of goofy tone to it, where, like, it's this kind of, like, completely clueless, pre-nuclear war person suddenly thrown into this kind of, like, very horrific future. It's great. No, it's really fun. And, yeah, very Fallout-y. The entire series has this goofy Fallout tone.
What I want to go into now is how this season kind of came about in the way that it did. So in 2000, I think around 2001, Disney quote-unquote bought Power Rangers. By that I mean they bought the Fox Kids programming block and Power Rangers just happened to come with it. Initially they were just going to outright cancel the show and air reruns. And then someone pointed out they could cut the costs of production if they just relocated production from LA to New Zealand. So from Power Rangers Ninja Storm onwards, the show was filmed in New Zealand, which is ironic because when they moved the show over there, Power Rangers was outright banned in New Zealand. Like, they weren't allowed to air it. I think they've relaxed on that, but at the time it was just outright banned there. And yeah, during
Why?
This, quote unquote violence, I guess. But yeah, during this era, we did get some great seasons, like namely Dino Thunder, SPD, and Jungle Fury. But then we also got Mystic Force and Operation Overdrive, which, not so great. But after Jungle Fury, Disney planned on outright cancelling it again. and they wanted to instead produce an animated series based around Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But the producers of Super Sentai, Toei, they outright rejected it. And they were like, nope, you're not doing that. And I think because they still had a contract with Bandai, who wanted to produce more toys, and Jetix in Europe had like a contract for one more season, they were obligated to do this. And they brought in this guy called Eddie Gazelian, who had worked on American Dragon Jake Long. I think he was the producer of that, and he'd written for Kim Possible as well. They got him on board to oversee the season. I think it was going to be its last. I think they were like, yeah, this is the last season, let's just go all out. That kind of thing. And you can kind of see, because they took influence from Mad Max and the Terminator, which is funny because the Japanese show is not like that. There is no post-apocalyptic vibes in Engine Sentai Go Onja.
Oh my god, can I tell you the premise of Go Onja? Because I did read into it. The barbaric machine clan Gaiark was exiled from the machine world by the Engines, who are huge machines that have their own will. With the exile, the Gaiark switched their target to the world of humans and attacked it to pollute the earth in order to make the earth more habitable. This is when free young individuals with hearts of justice stand up as the Go Onjas. Anyway, so yeah, that's the premise of of this show in Japan, crazily enough. I guess, I mean, you can kind of see it. When you watch the show, you can see that influence.
I think that's why they put the Dome City in there, because that was their way of using the footage and making it work. And it also reminds me of the 1997 season of Power Rangers, which was Power Rangers Turbo.
Mighty engines roar, turbocharge for more, strive for on the floor, go! Power Rangers Turbo, go! Power Rangers Turbo, go! Power Rangers Turbo!
For that season, they had footage from a show called Gekitsu Sentai Car Ranger, which was an outright parody of Super Sentai. But they didn't do the best job of incorporating that into Power Rangers. I think because there's a split in the writing team. Like half the writing team wanted to make it more dark and mature, and the other half wanted to embrace the humorous nature of the Sentai. Not sure how verified that is, but I think that's just what I've heard. And there are other issues that season, like they replaced one of the Rangers with a 12-year-old boy, and that led to a massive drop in ratings, and the show almost got cancelled. Only for the next season, Power Rangers in Space, to be so good it brought viewers back, and then that's why it's continued.
Going back to what Ian was saying about the kind of like, you know, machines and stuff, like how you can see the influence between the shows. There is a kind of like a sense that like there's, I don't know if you noticed this, but you know the villains of the show, they look kind of steam/diesel punk, in my opinion. They kind of look industrial, whereas the Rangers and the Dome and all that, they kind of looks kind of cyberpunk. And like, you know, kind of like there's all digital technology. I think there's one point where their character actually says, "We don't use paper here, we all use computers here," or whatever. But there's this kind of like idea of like this sort of polluting kind of force faced off against this kind of human manufactured like society. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy VII or something like that. You know, like where the industry is polluting the world, and I don't know, I quite like that aspect of it.
No, I can totally see that. Yeah, where well, they even show at the end that the robots have basically stopped growth in the outside world. And it's only when they defeat the robots. It's only after they defeat the robots that, you know, you see plants start growing again in the wastelands and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's very clearly Venjix, the evil robot virus villain, has been stopping the world from recuperating after his reign or during his reign. But yeah, no, it's an interesting thing though. I was reading about like the origins of RPM, and it is quite funny that, or like the origins of Power Rangers in general. So Power Rangers was basically, it was the American version was the brainchild of a guy called
Hayam
Saban. Hayam Saban, and Saban basically saw Super Sentai while he was in Japan and was like, let's do that in America, or in a kind of localized versions, and so what's interesting is that it was more of a comic book thing, because I know that Marvel was involved at some point, and like, so it was more of like a superhero-y kind of like product for kids to watch, like, for like Saturday morning TV. But what I find funny is that like RPM, we're right back to Beast Wars, where it was very much made with toys in mind, whereas I feel like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was like, it was a show that then produced toys rather than toys being the primary goal. Because yeah, as you said, Rob, like Bandai basically saved this show and meant that RPM happened, because they were like, we want to make more toys. So we're right back to Beast Wars with toys being the ultimate goal.
Yeah, the show is kind of self-aware about it. I think they
Yes.
actually make a joke about it. Like, Dr. K is like, the Power Rangers are like having a proper go at her at one point, just saying like, why do the Zorgs have anime eyes?
They actually say anime eyes, yeah.
And I love how they kind of like explain away kind of like
just
the
say, what?
kind of them explain away the kind of the sillier aspects of the show. And I love that kind of like meta humor. It's like when like I made the comment about spandex, like Dr. K's insistent that it's not spandex, and I forget her exact wording, but she's always, whenever someone says, why do you wear spandex, she's like, that is not spandex.
Please tell me, where do you get your spandex?
That is not spandex. The material is a self-assembling memory.
No, it is that she comes out with these kind of techno-babble explanations for what the anime eyes are, and why there's a big explosion every time they do it. And of course the explosion is this kind of big animation or animated sequence of them turning into the Power Rangers. So it is great. It's like a little tongue-in-cheek nod to,
Sometimes when I morph, I can't help but notice this gigantic explosion right behind me for no apparent reason.
I assume you're referring to the residual energy runoff that is sometimes necessary to clear the suit's biofield channels during the
I'm referring to the 6-story high fireballs, like that one, right there. Now, could that happen to me in the kitchen or something?
And it's like, why do we have to shout RPM get in gear? Oh, the morphers are voice activated, and that's the code that activates your morphing sequence. I liked that aspect of the humour, but on the other end of the spectrum, there's kind of a lot of 2000s era Disney Channel humour, which didn't really work for me. But however, I'm 28 years old, and this show is made for I think possibly this show's made for a younger demographic than anything we've looked at so far.
Yeah, that's the confusing thing about this show. I was not 100% sure about it all when I was watching it either. Like, as you said earlier, Rob, the first 2 episodes are great. Like, it's like watching Mad Max. I certainly hope the people that worked on the show do get a chance to work on a Mad Max film, because I think they would do a really good job. But what just confused me is that a good way to compare this, Infinity War. That's kind of still aimed at young children, well, not young children, but like children basically, and teenagers and stuff like that. And that has an apocalyptic event happening in that movie. And basically the characters respond in a way that I find is quite believable in that show. Whereas because of the light-hearted tone of this being in Power Rangers, I feel like everyone behaves in a way that doesn't feel right, almost like, oh, everyone's dead, but let's make jokes, and here's Ziggy, everything's fun and stuff. It felt weird. Obviously, it's Power Rangers, I know I can't critique it, I know, but...
I gotta disagree with you, because Andrew's the butler, okay?
Oh yeah, that was tragic.
Andrew's the butler. He is the representative of all of humanity, and I am still crying to this day after his death. So Andrews the butler was Summer, the Yellow Ranger's butler, because she was like a rich, spoilt brat girl before the apocalypse, and he he rescues her, and he's great, and I love him. And but then he horrifically dies. It's like.
Can I just say also, I got a little note on my phone here saying, like, when I was watching the episode, I was writing this down, and I'm just going to read out what I just wrote. I said, feel sorry for the Yellow Ranger's butler, aka Alfred, because he's continuously injured and disregarded, bless, and he's dead.
And now he's dead.
I think the most tragic character is probably Dr. K, because as we watch on later, kind of spoilers, but everything that's happened is on her, kind of, because basically her backstory was she was brought up in this kind of government think tank, and all she wanted was to go outside, but she's told, oh no, you're too sick to go outside, so you need to stay inside. Maybe next year you can go outside. Here, do some math instead.
Happy birthday, Kay.
Can I go outside now?
Kay, we've been over this. You're a very sick little girl, and the sun makes you unwell.
Maybe next year.
You know what could be really fun in the meantime?
You could try cracking this series of encrypted rocket codes.
Or you could design us a thermal-sensitive guidance system.
One year she just absolutely broke, and she made this virus to kind of shut down the systems to allow her to go outside. But of course the government kind of stops her before she's able to install like an antivirus to stop it spreading further.
I'm getting out of here, and I'm taking you two with me.
But what about
the sun? Don't you get it? We aren't allergic to sunlight. We never have been. It was all a lie.
But we don't have access
to Alphabet Soup security computers. I don't need access. I just need to blind the servers for a few minutes. With this. A wireless upload of the Vengex virus. It's a self-aware, self-generating computer virus. Meet Project Vengex. No! Gemma, no! 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 You have to let me install the firewall to stop it! Our Vengex will spread beyond Alphabet Soup! No! I just wanted to go outside!
And that's of course Vengex, who then breaks loose and literally destroys the world. So basically this show is all about how the military-industrial complex, who apparently experiments on children, causes the end of the world. So good job, American military-industrial complex.
Just remember to change the password on your computer every week. Oh, sorry, go.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I did enjoy, there were these little, like the whole Dr. K story, that is a bit of a satirical bite to it. The fact that, they basically just kidnap a child and just like tell her, right, you're going to make super weapons for us now. Because she's like a super genius, and yeah.
As we're talking about Dr. K, she had a prominent role, well, kind of prominent role in a certain big budget, big profile movie a few years before this, as when she was a young girl, I think the actress name Olivia Tennant, she was in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, as the little Rohirrim girl, Freda, at the start.
That's just mad. It's just absolutely bonkers. It's all connected.
Yeah, no, well, it's her and but also the one that blew my mind a little bit was Rose McIver, who is the lead in iZombie, which is a show I of course watched, but I feel like people don't talk about it anymore. But yeah, that was a show I watched. But she's the lead in that, and here she is as one of the Power Rangers. And James, you were saying you recognised the Red Ranger.
Yeah, so let me get his name up just to remind myself. I've completely forgotten already.
Edgar Darville.
Yeah, that's the one. And he was in Jessica Jones as Jessica's like flatmate, who's also a drug addict, a recovering drug addict. Jessica Jones is a good show. The first series is good. Don't watch the second and third series, and don't watch any of the other MCU Netflix stuff, apart from maybe Daredevil, because it's just not worth your time. But he's a good actor. I'm glad he's in other things. I think he's a good actor in the show, So.
We were talking about tragic backstories. I guess the big one would be Dylan's, the Black Ranger, because he's got the most kind of like, he's the character we're first introduced to, and he has the kind of the most overarching story. So yeah, once again, basically he was kidnapped and turned into a cyborg by Vengex. So that's cool. It's a cool origin. And his memory's been wiped. So because of course it has been. So yeah, he's on a quest to reclaim his memories.
That's one thing I find really interesting is, rather uniquely, this season is heavily focused on the Black Ranger, Dylan, because typically, normally the Red Ranger gets most focus as he's normally the leader, or at the very least the protagonist of the show. The Red Ranger this time, Scott, he does get an arc because he wants to prove himself to his father, but this time we've got the Black Ranger getting the most focus because he's trying to get his memories back and he's searching for his sister, who's now working with the bad guys.
You're my sister.
Your sister? Are you kidding?
Do I look like I'm kidding? I don't remember much, but I know that Vengex made us both hybrids. You're human, Tanaya.
Newsflash! I am Generation 7 robotic technology.
Maybe. Maybe not.
No? Then what is this?
Oh my god, how could you spoil that completely unforeseen plot detail? Sorry, I just had to point that out. I do want to talk about Tanaya.
Power Rangers in Space had a very similar plotline because the Red Ranger in that show, his sister, or the long lost sister, was the main bad guy, and that's something that was because like we meet this character, the Red Ranger, and he's looking for his sister, and then about halfway through the season, you find out that it's this bad guy Astronomer. Although it's a bit different to what they do in this show because Astronomer was kidnapped as a child and raised to be evil, whereas Tanaya, as we'll get onto later, made to be kind of like a robot, as it were.
I can't believe this.
What are you talking about?
You're Corone, my sister.
Corone? That's not true. You destroyed my parents and my brother.
No, listen to me. I am your brother.
Nice try, Red Ranger. But your tricks won't work on me.
You mentioned, James, that there was a bit of Clint Eastwood in here. And I wanted to point out, with Dylan and with his sister Tanaya, there is this detail of them both having a pocket watch with a little bell chime, and that is literally the exact same origin story as Lee Van Cleef's character in For a Few Dollars More, with the bell chimes playing. So it's a great little touch because it's brilliant. Like that's the connection is when Dylan hears Tanaya whistling a tune and he goes, wait a minute, that's the pocket watch tune. And it's great, and that's when they realize that, they're brother and sister. But yeah.
The writers of the show, they must have watched so many movies. They're complete nerds and they love it. Like they obviously know their pop culture quite well. They make references to Clint Eastwood, to Terminator and Mad Max. I want to say The Godfather as well. Kind of.
Oh, it's kind of like a big melting pot. Like things that they were into. Like there's definitely of course, the Mad Max and Terminator, which is where we get the big post-apocalyptic vibes from. And there's a few others like Clint Eastwood, like westerns, and The Godfather, which mainly comes through from Ziggy and his backstory of him working with the mob.
We got to talk about the best character in the show, which is of course Ziggy, played by Milo Corfon. Ziggy is the comic relief. He's the kind of dumb, lovable idiot who just kind of basically stumbles into becoming a Power Ranger. He becomes it accidentally, right? Like he just kind of puts it on. He's like, oops.
Yeah. And they can't reverse it.
Oh yeah, Dr. K refuses to call him Ziggy. She always calls him Ranger Green.
Yeah, and he's he's bumbling, but we all love him. But the other thing is, he's like a petty criminal when we first meet him. He's tied up in this underworld, and as you said, Rob, it's all mafia type characters and the mob boss guy. And Ziggy's just this kind of dumb idiot who just kind of stumbled into all of this. But of course, he has a heart of gold, as we discover in his origin story. So he is a good guy, but I love the way he fights. So most of the Power Rangers have the classic kind of they kind of do their karate like somersault, jumping around stuff. But with Ziggy, it's cool. They always kind of made a point to show that his way of fighting is just avoiding fighting as much as possible.
It just sort of bounces away. You know when you're a kid and you're like on a bouncing castle, like running away from another kid trying to bounce away. That's Ziggy's fighting style.
He's always ducking and like rolling away and just like, ah! Ah!
I don't want to be a Power Ranger.
Whoa! I'm a Power Ranger! I don't want to be a Power Ranger! I do not want to be a Power Ranger!
This story, most of the story in RPM is kind of non-linear. There's always flashbacks and stuff like that. And like obviously we're introduced to the Black Ranger in the first episode. And then all of a sudden Ziggy shows up, this dork in the middle of nowhere with a stick going like, put your hands up. So I'm just...
It is very Mad Max.
Yeah, it is. But also there's that moment, because he's kind of like Gyro Captain in a way, but... there's that moment where you're just kind of thinking to yourself, what? How did he end up here? What's going on here? And how does he know about these Power Rangers and stuff like that? But then, in his origin episode, it explains and kind of connects the dots as to how he got there to begin with. I really like that. That's the sort of writing you get in friggin' Breaking Bad, like non-linear storytelling to that effect. So I really like that.
Like I mentioned, like there's stuff that they tease at early on, like Dylan's entire story, really. They tease it right at the very beginning, and it like plays out throughout the entire show. So they do a really good job of kind of like pulling you on, because most of the show is just classic Power Rangers. Like it is what I said about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. An evil robot shows up, he gets really big at the end, they turn into a giant robot and they punch the evil robot in the face and it blows up. That's mainly the plot, but what they do to keep you interested is tease you with all these little touches here and there, like Tanaya 7 and her story with Venjix as well. Tanaya has big, so she's like the evil hench girl, I should mention, and she reminds me so much of Shigo from Kim Possible, so it makes sense that there were writers from Kim Possible working on this show. No, she's got big Shigo vibes, so if you're a big Shigo fan, as I know some of my friends definitely are for reasons, you should definitely watch this show just for Tanaya 7, because you'll enjoy it.
One thing I did really like about Tanaya was when she found out that Dylan was her brother, she wasn't instantly like, oh, you're my brother, I'm going to turn good now. She was unsure about it. She kind of doubted herself, and she was like, the only way to set this right is just to kill Dylan or destroy Dylan. Yes.
But it doesn't surprise me at all that Ewan in particular likes this character, because I'm gonna be honest, she reminds me so much of the clone Ripley from Alien Resurrection.
That's so specific.
It is, but the way her memories are kind of been like altered and stuff like that, and she's kind of like an artificial being and stuff, and also is just like literally a threatening human that's amongst all these other monsters and stuff like that. Just kind of remind me of the alien woman from Alien Resurrection.
You've got a good point there. A very good point. Also, watch Alien Resurrection, a very good film.
It is a great film.
I disagree. But yeah, speaking of the villain, I personally would have preferred it if Venjix was more kind of like a voices presence, something more like Skynet from Terminator. But because this is a show for children, I get why they went for Venjix being a more tangible threat with loads of these underlings. And I did love the dynamic they developed a bit later on, where all of his foot soldiers were trying to one-up each other, and my favourite villain ended up being Kilobyte, who's got this really cool striking design, and he's got a really cool kind of British villain kind of voice.
He's like a gay pirate. He turns up like a swashbuckler. It's amazing. He's great because he kind of dethrones Tanaya, who's always been kind of the leader really of the kind of like the robot henchman. But here's this, he's very sexist, Kilobyte. For a robot, he's very sexist towards Tanaya. But again, that's like a fun thing for her to kind of like, you know, fight against, and another reason for her to be like, actually these robots kind of suck. But Kilobyte's great. He's a really fun kind of just dynamic, like, because he turns up later on in the show as well. So he's like, and that's the other thing. Yeah, he's been wandering the wastelands apparently, just like conquering the world on his own. Like, there's all of these robot characters who have their very specific like personas that are completely distinct from Venjix. So it's not like a Terminator situation where they're all just Skynet, you know, like there's more going on to them, which is really fun. Yeah, no, it's good.
You're late. The plan has changed. I've come to say goodbye. Where are you going? Nowhere. You're the one who is leaving.
I'm surprised that you guys haven't talked about Flynn.
He's my favourite character.
He's such a good cop.
I like him because he's got a really cool backstory. He's like, he grew up reading comic books and was inspired to help people because he wanted to be a superhero. And he tried all these numerous jobs. Like, he tried being a policeman, a fireman. He tried being kind of like a volunteer helper. Only ended up getting fired from all of them because of his good nature.
He's too good. Oh my god. Oh. Yeah, I just remembered though, yeah, when I mentioned earlier that this show has satirical elements, I'd forgotten, yeah, when he goes off to volunteer, he's like working in this like kind of third world, you know, like charity organization. And it's literally like, basically the charity is a front for like some capitalist, like they're gonna build a factory there or something, and I was like, oh my god, this is great. It's like an actual satirical beat,
and he kind of becomes Braveheart and these stands against them. It's brilliant. And
he leads a rebellion.
And then he so after all this fails, he becomes a mechanic, and then when Venjix invades, he heroically commandeers a bus to rescue some survivors because he hears there's like a child trapped or something. So he goes back and gets a bus and rescues everyone.
Her name's Penny. She's only 5 years old.
Sorry, Da.
Run! No!
It's just who I am.
Come on!
And yeah, also he's Scottish, as he proudly proclaims it.
Red is the perfect one. Black is the brooding bad boy. Green is the clown, and yellow, well, she's the girl. So what are you supposed to be?
I'm Scottish!
He's like a crossbreed between the Scotsman from Samurai Jack and a hippie. I love him. He goes out of his way to save a fish, like save the goldfish and he saves all the children. He's like, oh no, the goldfish and the plants. He's like, no, I'll save them too.
What I love is that because he's the Blue Ranger, he's got this like these white harness things around his body, and it's literally it's the Scottish flag. it's really dumb. I love it. Yeah. So There's a lot of character in this show. It's got a lot going for it. I love the music beat that plays whenever we go to Venjix's fortress. It's like bam, bam, bam. You know, there's like little touches like that. I was like, oh, this is a good old time.
Do you know, I kind of didn't really notice that this was all borrowed footage. I actually genuinely did not. If like no one told me that this was borrowed footage, I would not have noticed.
I think in more recent years, don't know when it started, but I think the quality of footage has remained the same between the two shows, whereas in like the early shows there was like a vast difference. Like if you would go back and watch like earlier seasons, like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you will definitely see a difference when they cut to Japanese footage.
Right, yeah, it's not as noticeable here.
Can I just say, you know, for me, it's a criticism for the show.
Is it Gem and Gemma?
Sometimes I feel like No, I'll get to that. I've written out. That's my last point up, but after this point, which is that. For me personally, I don't know if you guys get this. I mean, obviously, this is catered towards kids. Kids like action, stuff like that. For me, the battle scenes do drag on a little bit, and I ended up just zoning out, and then literally ended up tidying up my room or something. But
speaking of that was the one thing I did want to mention was one fight scene I did really like. Before you start trashing the fight scenes, I do really love the fight scene in the playground, which is mainly that's Scott and Ziggy, isn't it? They're like saving this mum and her baby, and there's like all the grinders have turned up to attack, and it's just really cute because it's obviously a nod to the fact that like kids are going to be playing like Power Rangers in the playground, and I just thought it was a really cute little touch.
That is an exceptional one, but what I'm more referring to is like the big Zorg fights and just like the general like them fighting in the car park or whatever, like they do all the time, and it takes away.
It is cool, but it is at times it can make the show feel very formulaic. Although it has been done much worse because there was this show season later on called Power Rangers Megaforce/Super Megaforce, and practically every episode there was like no story. It was literally like they kind of like talk about something, and just as you think something interesting like a character development's going to happen, oh no, all the monsters are coming. Like the whole episode will just be a load of just brainless fight scenes, and because they were trying to get through as much footage as possible, so they tried to do two different Super Sentai shows in one season, and it just didn't work.
The most, I think, for me, like the least interesting thing about this show was the action and the Power Rangers stuff. It was more the characters and everything else going on that interests me.
I like that they spend a lot of the time with their cars, which I really liked. So there's like a bit of a rivalry between Scott and Dylan, where they're like fixing their cars up, and they're always trying to one up each other.
Inevitably, I've got to bring it up because Rob's now mentioned it, and here's the last point I've actually written out. I've finished pretty much all my points apart this one thing, which is this show decreased in quality for me personally when Jem and Gemma became like basically regular characters of the show. I thought they were alright in Dr. K's origin story. I thought, okay, they're a bit weird, but that's fine. But then they became reoccurring characters. They keep finishing each other's sentences for each other. They're always kind of just all full of like this weird energy to the point where they kind of creep me out.
James, do you have a weird twin phobia that we don't know about after all this time, where you just look at twins and you start freaking out?
It's not. I've been friends with people that are twins. Like, they don't finish each other's sentences. It's not like they do in Power Rangers RPM.
The points that Jem and Gemma got introduced, I think it was about halfway through the show, and it's interesting because halfway through the show, the original showrunner Eddie Gazelian, he got taken off the show for going over budget. So then they brought in Judd Lin, who produced a couple of Power Ranger shows beforehand, to kind of like take the reins. So that's probably why that kind of changed.
I wasn't as bothered by Jem and Gemma as you guys seem to be. Like they're fairly kiddie characters. They're the sort of thing that kids will find funny because it's like they finish each other's sentences and they like to blow things up. But also I kind of like that when we're first introduced to them, like Dr. K herself is like, yeah, I hate you two. Like she's very clear that they're annoying. But that's kind of cute. I like that they turn up later on. I do like the detail that they mention the gold and silver Power Ranger suits like before they introduce them later on. So again, it's a nice little detail where they foreshadow this later plot development, which is cool. But yeah, no, I know it is a bit Jar Jar Binksy. Which is a shame because I feel like Ziggy had managed to not be that, whereas Jem and Gemma are definitely in that category. Yeah.
One thing I want to bring up is this show does end on a bit of a cliffhanger. I think, from what I can understand, this was supposedly done to try and convince Disney to keep the show going. Didn't seem to work because the next year they just aired a quote-unquote special edition of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which is the exact same show. They just overlaid these weird special effects on the top of it, so it's kind of like all these weird sparkly effects. And I think Haim Saban, who created Power Rangers to begin with, he saw this and was like, they're not doing anything with this, and he bought the property back from Disney. And I think because Disney weren't doing anything with it, they were happy to give it back to him. And then production of the series resumed in, I think, 2011 with Power Rangers Samurai. Although I think Saban's no longer involved, he's retired and he sold the franchise to Hasbro. And in 2000...
It's just mad that Disney sold something. Sorry, Karen.
But yeah, in 2019, the first Hasbro season started, which was Power Rangers Beast Morphers.
For justice we fight, with Beast Morphin light, together we rise.
And the very end of that show reveals that it is a sequel to RPM, as spoilers. It turns out the computer virus bad guy in Beast Morphers was Vengix the whole time.
You're starting to put it together. A cell shift morpher that could mean only one thing.
I was Vengix! I have had many forms, and now my victory is certain.
So he's the computer virus that almost destroyed an entire world?
Oh my god! Doesn't Dr. K come back in that
Yeah,
show as well?
Dr. K comes back, and I think Colonel Truman, I think that's his name, he comes back as well.
Oh, nice! Wow, that's cool. I'm glad they've come back. Yeah, that's really cute.
Yeah, it's a bit kind of weird because I think the kids watching Beast Morphers probably weren't alive when RPM aired, so
that's fine. They've got to watch RPM now.
Yeah, it's weird how RPM is literally deliberately made into a separate universe from the rest of the Power Rangers. That also makes me turn around and go, hang on a minute. So all the Power Rangers are all shows connected in one fictional universe? Is that how it works? I didn't know that.
So Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had 3 seasons. After that, they went to an interquel series called Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers, and then they went on to Power Rangers Zeo. It's basically they just changed the kind of suits and powers, but it was the same characters basically. This continued until Power Rangers in Space, which was supposed to be like this big concluding series where all the bad guys from previous seasons were all part of this big thing called the United Alliance of Evil. And yeah, that was supposed to conclude everything because they thought it was going to be the last one. And then Lost Galaxy onwards, Lost Galaxy was established before. It's had ties to the previous seasons, but it was its own thing with a new cast of Rangers and everything. And every season since then has kind of been its own thing. Although I think RPM and what's it called, Dino Charge are both in separate universes. Beast Morphers is in the main Power Rangers universe, but because the previous season Ninja Steel established that you can travel between dimensions, and so Vengix travel between dimensions basically.
Oh my god. There's what is it, like a Power Rangers cinematic universe or something?
I like that all of the robot enemies all apparently have the same shooting abilities as stormtroopers, because every time they shoot, they'll always shoot just behind the Power Rangers, so you get these amazing explosions, and then all the characters get thrown 100 feet into the air, and they go, whoa! And it's great. And you have to see every Power Ranger do that. It's not just the one Power Ranger who gets thrown into the air. No, all of them do, and you see each one get thrown into the air.
That wasn't always. I think that trend started during the Disney era.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Disney wanted to cut down on more of the kind of the punching and kicking, so they just substituted that with more explosions.
As you do.
I did like the behind the scenes episode that they did where Ziggy pulls the. What I loved is that they did it, but so all the characters were still the characters, but then they were just showing you how they do the behind the scenes stuff. And one of them they did show was how they do the explosions. It's all safety first. Don't do this at home, kids. And they showed how they practiced all of their choreography, and it was really cute. And I really like that Tanaya's just sitting around with all the grinder robots looking after her. It's great.
When you mentioned the "don't try this at home" thing, it reminds me when I used to watch Power Rangers. This was when it was on Fox Kids or Jetix. Whenever it finished, they showed up this safety disclaimer after every episode saying, "Please remember, the Power Rangers are not real. They're all played by specially trained martial arts experts. And please do not try and copy them for your own safety."
Yeah, that's fair.
Do you want to hear a warning? I know you do. Well, listen to me carefully. The Power Rangers know their stuff. I don't do what they do. I don't want you to copy anything that they do. You hear me? Yeah! All right.
They look like they're having so much fun on set as well. It looks like such a good vibe that was going on that show.
Well, the testament to that is that, if I find it, is that Milo Corfon, Olivia Tennant, Ari Boyland, who plays Flynn, and Adelaide Kane all came back to do a movie together called Blood Punch, which I want to watch. And that was directed by Madeleine Paxson, who was a screenwriter for RPM, as well as Kim Possible. So, yeah, apparently they've stayed pretty good friends since the show, and it was really cute seeing that. And I want to see the film because apparently it's good.
And of course, Ziggy and Dr. K's actors, they were married for a few years.
Yeah. Wild. So yeah, no, it is really cute. It's such a cute like dynamic. Like all the characters are like they play off each other really well. It's a good cast. And you know, while it is fairly kid friendly, there's some nice dark stuff to it that kind of keeps your interest. And it's a good old show. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely. I recommend it. Even if you're not a big Power Rangers fan, like you watch it as its own thing. Don't need to watch anything else to understand it. So yeah, everything's explained to you as you watch the show, and of course it takes place in its own universe, so you don't have to worry.
As someone who has not watched Power Rangers, I had a good time. So I think, you know, if you ever want to dip into Power Rangers RPM is a cool one to kind of check out, especially because it's in its own universe thing, so that's fine. If you don't want to get caught up in the whole big continuity, this is a good intro to the general premise of the show, I guess.
And if you're like me and you watched it as a kid, you're in for a ride. Yeah.
And also watch Power Rangers Time Force, because that one's really fun. But yeah, Ewan, what are we talking about next time?
Charlie, you look quite down with your big sad eyes and your big fat frown. The world doesn't have to be so grey. We're doing Charlie the Unicorn, the famous or infamous YouTube series, which of course started off with Charlie being tormented by a pink and a blue unicorn as they journey off to Candy Mountain. It's a YouTube series close to my heart for being insane and the best that the internet has ever produced, and I'm very excited to talk about it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I've never seen it, so this sounds like an experience as someone who has never watched this before.
You have a lot of fun, Rob.
It's a musical extravaganza. It's amazing. You got a little taster of one of the songs just now.
So yeah, until next time, the Bloobcast bids you farewell.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Bloobcast. We've been Rob, James and Ewan. You can find all of our episodes on bloobcast.com. We're also available on SoundCloud, Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
We also have a YouTube channel where we produce shorter episodes called Blooblets, where we discuss the latest news in popular culture. You can find us on social media with @BlueCastPod on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Please like, follow and subscribe so you can get the latest updates on new episodes.
We also have an email address, which is bloobcast@outlook.com. So if you have any feedback or want to suggest things for us to review on our future episodes, please feel free to drop us an email and you'll get a shout out on the next episode. Please also rate and review us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. More engagement helps us a lot. And finally, please share the podcast amongst your friends and family. Help spread the word so that the Bloobcast empire can become strong and mighty.
The Power Rangers battle evil with new RPM battle gear. The Nitro Blaster has engine cell technology to activate sound command. Activate. Then morphs to sword mode. Now grab your cell shift morpher to call your Zord. Let's go, Rangers! Then get in here with the rev shift morpher. Go full throttle on evil. New RPM DX battle gear, each sold separately. Bandai.